"I'll leave at dawn," said the rejected mail-order bride. The rancher barred the door, not alone. Snow fell like a quiet verdict the morning Clara Whitmore realized she had been chosen, and unchosen, by the same man. She stood on the porch of the ranch house with a folded letter trembling in her hands, the ink blurred from where her fingers had sweated through the night. Behind her skirts, two small bodies pressed close, as if warmth alone could protect them from what was coming. Ahead of her, the door remained shut, heavy as judgment. Clara had traveled 1,000 miles by rail and wagon to reach this place, answering an advertisement written in stiff, careful words: "Widowed rancher seeks wife. Honest work. Modest home. No frivolities." It hadn't promised love, but Clara hadn't expected love. She had expected survival. For herself, and for Ellie and Thomas, her sister's children, left orphaned by winter sickness and buried under frozen ground back east. The man who had written the ad, Jonah Reed, had met her at the station with a nod and a glance that lingered too long on the children. He'd said little on the ride to the ranch, only that he hadn't known she would be bringing anyone with her. Clara had apologized, explaining breathlessly that she couldn't leave them behind. He had grunted in response, the sound of a door closing before it ever opened. Now the letter said what his silence hadn't dared: "I am not equipped to raise children. I will not take on what I did not agree to." Clara swallowed hard and folded the letter again, as though smaller words might hurt less. She had planned to leave at dawn, quietly, without argument. Pride was the last thing she owned outright. She would not beg. "I'll leave at dawn," she whispered, more to herself than to the house. "We'll find another way." Ellie, only 6, wrapped her arms around Clara's waist. "Are we in trouble again?" she asked, her voice small but brave. Clara knelt despite the cold biting through her dress. "No, sweetheart. We're just changing plans." That was when the door opened. Jonah Reed stood in the doorway, hat pulled low, jaw tight. He looked as if he hadn't slept. His arms crossed over his chest, not in defiance, but in a way that suggested holding something together inside himself. "I heard you," he said. Clara rose slowly. "I meant no disturbance. We'll be gone before the sun." "You won't." His voice was firm, but not cruel. He stepped aside and held the door open. "Not alone." The words landed between them, heavy and strange. Clara searched his face for mockery or pity and found neither. Only something raw, unsettled. She hesitated, then gathered the children and stepped inside. The days that followed were colder than Clara remembered any winter being. But something else began to thaw. Jonah was not unkind, though kindness did not come naturally to him. He showed the children where the chickens were fed and warned them sternly away from the well. He left bowls of stew on the table without comment. At night, Clara heard him pacing, as though wrestling ghosts that refused to sleep. One evening, as snowstorm winds howled against the logs, Thomas asked Jonah why he lived alone. The question struck like a dropped plate. "My wife died," Jonah said finally. "Childbirth." Silence filled the room. "She was strong," he added, softer. "Too strong to ask for help." Something shifted then, an invisible seam splitting open. Clara realized his rejection had not been of her, but of the future she represented. Children meant hope, and hope meant the risk of loss. The unexpected turn came not in words, but in action. When Ellie fell ill with fever, it was Jonah who rode through the storm to fetch the doctor, returning half-frozen but triumphant. When Clara thanked him with tears in her eyes, he looked away. "I didn't do it for thanks," he said. "I did it because someone once didn't come in time for my family." That night, Clara understood. Compassion was not Jonah's weakness, it was his buried strength. Spring came reluctantly, melting the snow inch by inch. The ranch began to feel less like a shelter and more like a home. Laughter returned to the walls. Jonah taught Thomas how to mend a fence. Ellie braided Clara's hair while Jonah pretended not to smile. The emotional climax arrived not with a proposal, but with a choice. One morning, Jonah placed a new letter on the table, this one from a neighboring rancher, offering Clara work in a place if she wished to move on. Jonah watched her read it, his face unreadable. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "I barred the door once. I won't do it again." Clara folded the letter carefully, just as she had the first. Then she placed it into the fire. "I didn't come here for a roof," she said steadily. "I came here to build something, with kindness or not at all." Jonah's breath caught. For the first time, he reached out, not to stop her, but to stand beside her. Years later, people would say the Reed Ranch was known not for its cattle, but for its open door. Travelers found warmth there. Orphans found a table. Broken souls found a place to rest. And on winter mornings, when snow fell softly at dawn, Clara would remember the day she planned to leave, and the man who taught her that sometimes, humanity arrives not with open arms, but with a door finally unbarred. Not alone.